please raise your hand. Both committee and presenters, the video on for committee and presenters only. Microphone, public members are muted. This meeting is being recorded, and captioning for this meeting is available by using your captioning settings and show subtitles. Next slide.
Viewer. I think we're struggling here. Oh yeah, I want to mute us for a second.
All right, so our agenda today, welcome and introductions, public comment, approval of the 10/22 meeting minutes, program updates, annual CIP review, updates and review of public comment. We'll take a break. And have the annual CIP review continue, and then we'll close the meeting around 7:30. Yes, Meg, Robin, y'all are, yeah, thanks. Good. Okay, next slide, please. Introductions. I would love to start with Tracy, if you don't mind. The three of you in that. Now that would love to have your microphone on, if that's okay.
I'm hoping there's not a lot of, okay. Sorry about that, everyone. No, nope. I think Dr. Moses, if you can maybe go someone else until we get this fixed.
That sounds great. Okay, Andre, would you like to start us off and then popcorn over to another committee member?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Andre Lightsey Walker, use he, him pronouns, and PCEF committee member. I'm excited to be here. Ramfis.
Good evening, Ramfis Santino, Vittoro, he, him pronouns, committee member, and let's see who else to kick it over to. Dr. Moses, I'll kick it back to you. I don't know if Robin, Tracy, and Meg were able to solve their audio issues.
So now we just put.
So I'm Dr. Christine Moses. I use she, her pronouns. I'm your facilitator, and I'm going to popcorn over to Anna.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Anna Allen, she, her pronouns, and I'm a committee member. Honored to be here. And I'm going to see if Tracy is able
I am. Yes, thank you so much. I moved to a different room. I'm going to turn my camera on real quickly, please. Alrighty. So, good evening, everyone. Hello, I'm Tracy Scott and a PCEF co-chair. Welcome to everyone and good seeing everyone. We're here in person, Robin being the host.
Wonderful. Welcome in, Robin. Please introduce
Hi.
yourself and kick it over to Meg.
Yeah, Robin Wang, committee member. Hi, everybody.
And then Meg, yay.
Hi all. Well, committee member and also joining and then in with Robin and Tracy. Nice to be in person with some folks.
Cool. Thank you so much, everyone. I believe that is everyone. Sam.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Sam Barroso, he, him pronouns, program manager of the PCEF team. It's wonderful to be here, and I wish I was there to help you all negotiate those audio issues, because I feel like we've been in that boat so many times, like one mic, one speaker, everyone. Anyways, so I'll go ahead and turn it to just James to introduce himself, since folks will hear from him later this evening, and then Rachel.
Yeah, hi everybody. Good to be with you all. James Valdev, he, him, PCEF staff, and yeah, it looks like you were using an OWL device for part of the meeting there, and yeah, we do have some experience at PCEF with those, and they're a little tricky to set up. So, but that's great that you guys can all be in person together. I'll pass it to Rachel.
Good evening, everyone. Rachel Gilmore, she, her, PCEF staff.
Beautiful. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. We're going to center. I'm going to invite everyone to close your eyes or to gaze softly down. We're just going to take a minute here to breathe. That's it. Just notice your breath. No judgment, just notice. All right, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes slowly. Take a big stretch up. Thank you so much. Why do we do that? Why do we center at the beginning of the meeting? Anyone can jump in.
We've got a lot going on. It's nice to get ourselves present in the space.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sam. Next slide, please. Public comment. Would love to have public comment. I know that there are at least 3 people who have signed up. So please indicate your interest in providing public comment by raising your hand and indicate your interest through the Zoom or chat. Yes, I see my 3 people. For those joining the meeting by phone, please enter *9 on your phone to indicate your interest in providing public comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And Darlene, I would love to have you start us off, pretty please. Welcome in. Darlene.
Good evening. This is Darlene Sherman. I'm a volunteer with member of the 350 PDX transportation team. We look forward to the annual report, which we understand is under development. We urge you to include time metrics and timetables available for each of the PCEF funded projects. For example, we know that a number of community groups have been gathering applicants for a transportation wallet, SP7. How many passes have been issued? Is this program on target? What's the plan for the coming year? So those kind of information is really helpful in this upcoming annual report. Thank you. Regarding the adjustments to the CIP, including the one major shift in funds from SP13, the targeted EV financing tools, to SP1, clean energy and regulated multifamily affordable housing. On one level, this shift is really reasonable in that the EV financing tool is in early stages of development and unlikely to spend the entire funding during this CIP period. There are additional housing projects ready and in need of additional funds and meeting a significant community housing need and meeting PCEF goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and benefiting the PCEF priority population. However, from the standpoint of transportation emissions and projects to reduce these, this shift is somewhat concerning. In Multnomah County, 40% of greenhouse gas emissions come from the transportation sector. In that sector, the emissions have declined the least, 16%, according to the county or the BPS dashboard. Looking at the PCEF dashboard, the projected greenhouse gas reductions from transportation decarbonization are the lowest already of any funding area. 804 metric tons compared, for example, to energy efficiency at 27,626 metric tons. We do recognize that the transportation decarbonization projects are just not as developed as the other funding sectors, but we do urge PCEF to look at ways to expand this impact. 350 PDX look forward to expanding transportation decarbonization programs currently funded and under development and establishing future programs that can reduce transportation greenhouse gas emissions while enhancing transportation options for the PCEF priority population and the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to call on Brian, please. Brian, welcome in.
Good evening, members of the PCEF Committee. My name is Brian Hoop. I use he, him pronouns, Executive Director of Housing Oregon, the statewide association of 147 affordable housing and community development organizations, developers, affordable homeownership providers, homeless service organizations, and allied businesses across the state. Thanks for the opportunity for Housing Oregon to comment in support of PCEF's regulated affordable multi-housing program and propose amendments to the climate investment plan. Mirroring comments I already submitted in writing, we are in support of increasing funding by $15 million to Strategic Program 1, Clean Energy and Regulated Multi-Affordable Housing. And the additional funds will support an estimated 500 additional high-performance housing units. I just wrapped up my Portland Metro Policy Council meeting with my members about an hour ago with 47 of my members, and this topic came up. And they wanted me to just reiterate how important PCEF financial support has been to ensuring their various affordable housing developments pencil out financially and contribute to accomplishing the city's climate goals. And lastly, what I had overlooked in my written comments that was brought up in my meeting this afternoon was to advocate for the inclusion of middle housing and homeownership projects as recipients of PCEF funding. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe right now only multifamily rental housing is included. And we have groups like Proud Ground and Habitat for Humanity that are active members. I think, as you probably know, there's an incredible opportunity for middle housing as part of the city and statewide efforts to increase density on single-family tax lots that are allowed now. And our nonprofit homeownership members need additional resources to make such infill projects pencil out. So thank you for the opportunity to share comments.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to welcome in Jim. Jim?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Jim Edelson. I have been active in Oregon climate policy for over 2 decades. And like Darlene, I want to talk a lot about metrics, which are dear to me in my career in climate policy. The Chief Sustainability Officer of Portland, when Vivian delivered her report to Mayor Wilton and Council, he said it is good news that emissions have decreased, but they are not on track to reach the 2030 targets. He said to do this, Portland needs to steepen the reduction curve, essentially doubling emission reductions between now and 2030. Since my understanding is that the CEF is the most important source of funding to meet Portland's climate emergency, I have to say that I see lackluster climate benefits performance at best within the CEF programs. In the CEF, I see many, many challenges, especially when measured in dollars spent per metric ton reduced. I was further concerned when I read through the red line section 7, strategic program 7 and the investment plan update. In this strategy, I see you are now funding full subsidies for unlimited numbers of rides in fossil fuel taxis and fossil fuel Ubers, both of which in some cases may actually increase vehicle miles traveled or VMT. At the same time, the text in the red line completely deletes the goal for 15 to 21,000 metric ton CO2 reduction, and it also fully deletes the goal for increased percentages of use of lower zero carbon transportation options. I know these are hard metrics to measure, but I think it is irresponsible to completely remove the climate goals from the transportation strategy. This lack of accountability does not inspire confidence that CEF is centering enough on providing solutions to the climate emergency. As a taxpayer, long-term resident, and climate activist in Portland and in Oregon, I would like to see reconsideration of the goal deletions in Strategy 7 In addition, I would like to see greater transparency in the dashboard and in reports on the dollars per metric ton reduced metric. I do not see that very well produced. I think considering these these additional performance metrics and centering those in your deliberations will contribute to the effectiveness of the fund in meeting the city's goals and in mitigating the climate emergency we are all living through. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Tracy, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Moses. First off, thank you to all three public commenters and their contribution to really digesting and reading the revisions to the CIP. We certainly appreciate the comments to Darlene and Jim. Thank you so much for, essentially asking us to pay greater attention to the transportation emissions in section, I'm sure I'm saying this incorrectly, but section 7, I'm going to call it strategic project 7, I believe, for us to kind of double down and reconsider, some of the changes that we've made to that, and if nothing else, to at least revisit the metrics and the refunding of this strategic initiative. And then on to Brian, thank you so much for mentioning middle housing and something that we can consider in future strategic initiatives. So I do appreciate those comments. I would like to open it up to any of our committee members here. I see Andre did drop something in the chat that is also expressing his interest in how we achieve the reductions that were noted in Strategic Project 7. And then I certainly want to open it up to any other committee members who would like to share their thoughts.
Please raise your hand if you'd like to share. Renfees.
I'll just be brief on, I think, the comments we heard on when it comes to transparency and what's presented on the dashboards. I think, I won't speak for staff or folks on the subcommittee, but I feel like any perennial challenges you're going to have is what kind of data are you able to share that's digestible and presentable to the broader public. And I think every individual and group is going to want their own personal aspect or piece of information. And so, I think there's just inherent challenges, I think, with what can all be posted on the dashboard. But with that said, I think there should be an important consideration about how you make information accessible to the public. Like, I think is always going to be an interest for the general public and academics to look into metrics, things that may not necessarily all fit in a dashboard for design purposes. But I think there is something there in terms of balance around what keeps the program honest, or what keeps folks, analysts, academics, general public to look at, be able to provide that critique around what looks or appears to be giving our best bang for a buck, and provide that kind of information for us as a committee. So just want to sort of echo maybe other avenues that we can make information and data accessible. So just wanted to uplift that comment we heard from Jim.
Thank you so much. Meg.
Yeah, thank you. Should I? Okay. I want to respond to the comment about funding transportation, the My Transportation Wallet program, which indeed does include subsidies for folks to use a variety of active transportation choices like scooters, e-bikes, et cetera, and the bus and light rail, and as an option to take Uber, Lyft, or car sharing things in an emergency. And I asked actually that same question of staff and have raised that a few different times, like doesn't seem to be in great alignment. And I think, James, you've answered that for me before. And so I'm wondering if I can just cue you up to answer that question, because I do think it's an important one to talk about publicly.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. And I can jump in. So yeah, maybe just for additional context or explanation, the Transportation Wallet Access for All program, which is one portion of PBOT's Transportation Wallet, is distributed through community nonprofits and housing providers that they work with to provide income eligible Portlanders with access to those modes. And they do track the use of the wallet benefits. There's a variety of different wallet benefits that can be had through their programs. And some of them are really focused primarily on TriMet access and, basically are primarily public transit passes. But there is a wallet option that allows people to use through a prepaid debit card a certain amount of credits per. It's not unlimited, first of all. So I do want to, I guess, make that clear. There's not an unlimited amount of rides, but it is a amount loaded onto a prepaid debit card that can be used for either bike share or, if needed, for ride hailing services. And so the majority, though, from our understanding, and I'd have to look at the reports, but the majority are active transportation or transit passes. So it is a relatively small amount that is used for ride hailing services. And maybe just to name the challenge is that a lot of people who are using the transportation wallet do not themselves own a private vehicle, and so the assumption of mode shift from somebody driving themselves in a single passenger vehicle to using public transit is not the primary use. They do some survey of the transportation wallet participants, but that is the challenge of emissions reduction, is that many times people are just having more affordable access to some of the modes that they already would be dependent on if they're transit dependent. So that's the underlying basis for the draft recommendation, if that helps explain a little bit more.
And thanks, James. And I also want to chime in just one more comment on, I do understand the concern over or the concern over including vehicles in that program. And at the same time, I used to work in transportation demand management that was trying to encourage employees of large employers to take the bus to work. And in those programs, it also included some guaranteed rides home on occasion if you were a regular bus rider, because there are those emergencies that pop up. And sometimes people need that mental, just that awareness that, okay, I could access a vehicle to get to something quickly if needed in an emergency. So that does help also me understand the broader context of that. But I do think these are good questions to keep raising about that particular program with PCEF. Our mission is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and provide community benefits. So I appreciate the ongoing dialogue about this particular one.
Thank you, Meg. Anyone else? All right, Andre, did you want to say anything? You put a comment in the chat.
Oh, just sort of echo what I was saying. I'm very excited about the potential for decarbonization, and just thankful that folks are coming and talking to us, and want to find opportunities to work with community on this, because we're not going to solve it alone. So, Darlene, just wanted to appreciate you again. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Wonderful. We'll go ahead and move on to the next slide, please. Approval of meeting minutes from October 22nd through October 22nd. I apologize. Sam, we have quorum. Yes? Yes. Okay.
I'm nodding my head, but yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry. It's very, yeah. You're very small on my screen. All right. I would like a motion to accept the minutes from October 22nd.
I'll move.
Dr. Moses, I was going to say it looks like Andre did it first.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andre. May I have a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, may I have a vote to accept the minutes? All in favor? You can raise your hand, say aye, thumbs up. Beautiful. Thank you. The motion passes. Lovely. Next slide, please. Program updates, Sam. Oh, yeah, Sam.
All right, thank you. So seeing as how we met just recently, I think I've just got a couple things that I want to just flag and name, and it's a continuation update you're going to continue to hear. You're going to hear each time. One, as we noted in October, we were just doing essentially our soft launch of our single family clean energy. We're calling it energy friendly homes. Actually, I should really call it by what it's called, energy friendly homes. This is in the Climate Investment Plan. It's Strategic Program 3. And so we did our soft launch and rolled out our first 10 homes, did the work, worked with our contractors, and now we're scheduled for the full launch in December. So that's going well, and so what we're expecting is an announcement here to go out shortly to prospective households, and contractors will be eligible to apply to participate in the program as contractors starting tomorrow. So that's just one key thing. So we're getting into the full launch of that program. That's really exciting, because that's one of our largest strategic programs, and it's taken quite a bit. And I know, Meg, you joined us for a kickoff celebration last month, and that was folks got to see a sense of all the energy and the collaboration that was coming together to make that program possible. And many just different aspects of the program, whether workforce development as well as green infrastructure and tree planting efforts. Second, in our energy efficiency work area, we're moving into our second year of our work with our climate friendly public schools program. This is strategic program 16. And so, the first year, what we've seen from most of the school districts is a lot of developing the proposals for the funding that they've got to work on their school buildings. But we have been working actively with the student-led efforts. So as you all know, within that program, there was a significant allocation of funding for infrastructure that the school districts would get to deploy, whether on schoolyards, HVAC replacements, et cetera. So that work is happening, the planning efforts are happening. And then there was an allocation for student-led initiatives. This was associated with every middle and high school so that they could engage and work on climate efforts. And so we're now getting into the second year of that part of the program. And as of now, you can access it on our YouTube. We did produce a couple of videos just to feature some of the student-led projects from last year. So we'll make sure we follow up with you all afterwards. That's on the PCEF YouTube channel. There's both a shorter 6-minute version and a longer 12-minute version. So we're excited about that just because that's, as you all can expect, that's where we get a lot of energy and getting to see the youth develop their ideas. Moving on to our Collaborating for Climate Action program. One of the efforts with Energy Trust that's getting kicked off right now, and that's now going to be the Portland Solar Access Program. Formerly, this was the Solar for All program when it had some federal funding in there, which I know that's still up. We still have an asterisk for that federal funding, pending some other conversations and seeing whether that lands. And then second, we're going to be seeing the kickoff here of the Empowering PDX proposal. This was done by Bonneville Environmental Foundation. This was a whole several different community solar projects, largely on Port of Portland properties, but we expect that construction to begin before the end of this year. And so that's just active work that's getting moving underway, largely so we can absolutely leverage and tap into the existing solar credits that are out there. And then lastly, some of the work happening in that space is we have begun initiating and conducting a market assessment for our consumer financing program within Strategic Program 14. So that work is just getting underway. So those are things that's largely moving. We are similarly parallel to that, actively working with city leadership to finalize the funding decisions on our 2025 community grant cycle. So we're hoping to communicate those decisions, and we'll share those with you all here next week. So we're busy working that and tying loose ends, answering questions internally. And we will be having, fingers crossed, if all goes well, we'll be having a kickoff celebration in mid-early December, and we'll make sure to get that invite to you all. And then I think that's the large bucket of work that's happening. I think separate from that, I think the only other update I just want to acknowledge here while we are together is, I don't know, for folks that are tuned in, yesterday there was a Willamette Week article that did drop, and I just want to acknowledge it related to essentially a ballot measure effort that's beginning in earnest with some signature gathering in order, that's being largely seems like sponsored by the Portland Police Association or some other individuals in order to tap into PCEF resources to support hiring additional police officers. So we're tracking that. The administration hasn't taken a position on that, but I want to make sure, since we're all here, you all are probably wondering that that is out there. And so that was obviously news to us yesterday. That's really as much as I have to share there. Obviously, our work is focused on doing the work itself and making sure folks understand the work that we're doing. But I want to make sure, since we have you all in front of us, that I at least spend a moment to just acknowledge that that effort is out there and that the reporting has started on that. And so you'll probably hear more in the weeks and months to come.
Thank you so much, Sam. Are there any questions about program updates?
I have a quick question. What is the relationship between the PCEF committee and if that was to move forward with the police funding? I'm just curious, like what would the relationship look like? What role would we play? Would we play a role at all? Yeah.
I think there's two things. There's your all's role as a committee, and you all are advisory body to the city, and then you all obviously have your roles as individuals. I think at the moment, because we don't, I think all I can speak to is the reporting that has been shared out in the Willamette Week. I haven't seen the actual language of the ballot measure or the proposed language, so I don't know that we know exactly what's sort of there in terms of the what is actually stipulated within the ballot measure. So I'm really making sure that you all are aware we're tracking this and that we saw the ballot measure language, but without knowing or the indication that there's going to be a signature gathering effort to place something on the ballot in order to do that. So without knowing sort of more of what that's going to look like, and I suspect that'll take some shape in the weeks and months to come, I can't really speak to that relationship.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Meg.
Hi, yeah, Sam, you mentioned in your updates the community grant round award decisions. Could you say more about that? Like, I know some of us played a role. Historically, it's come to the full committee, like a portfolio. Can you just say a little bit more about all that?
Yes. So we've been working through the community grant rounds, which, as folks know, opened in March of this year. The application period closed in May with the expectation of getting to decisions in here shortly this fall. So hopefully here within the next couple of weeks. Now, historically, prior to the October 2022 code changes, the funding recommendations historically came to the PCEF committee. The PCEF committee made the funding recommendations to City Council. So the first change with October 22nd is the committee no longer makes recommendations on that individual grant recommendations. The focus is on the community grants. Now, in that form in the prior form of government, City Council still had a role on making decisions related to grants. So we would go through our normal process, make recommendations to the City Council. We've historically, I think Meg, you were probably involved this year. I believe you and D'Angelo were involved in the review. We still invited committee members to be part of the review process, but it was not in a formal recommendation role as a full body. It was individuals participating in the review process. Now there's a second change that's happened with the moving to the form of government now, starting as of January 1st of 2025. That kind of grant making, decision making is no longer in the purview of City Council. That's in the purview of city administration. City Council sets policies, sets direction, etc. But now that's a city administration decision. So that's why we've been briefing this week city administrators on that. So we've taken sort of the work that staff, external reviewers, others, including you all, have made, packaged those up, and we've been working that through the city leadership.
And will you be giving us a breakdown more on like number of applications and awards and quality and, just like the full kind of analysis of how the application process went and the awarding decisions and all that?
Yeah, I think
But
that
I'm also, a nerd here and I want the data as in our role of a committee.
Yeah. Let us think about that. At one level, we have a report that we're polishing up that obviously we're waiting to finalize that. So there'll be a broader sort of memo that speaks to the basics of what you just said. Who's applied? Where have they applied? What were the numbers? Where did folks sort of fall out, whether it was in eligibility, technical review, and so forth. So we will have that, and that will be part of the report that we share hopefully soon as the decisions get made. I think there's probably a follow-up conversation around sort of going from our very first round in 2020 to now in our fourth round. What are we seeing? What are the changes? What are the adjustments that we've made as we move through there in order to, one, on our end, ultimately have stronger, clearer projects when we get to onboarding them so that we can minimize the time from making awards to getting projects underway and implemented. And so there's a lot of lessons learned that I think we can certainly relay and continue to relay in terms of where we think we're going. So I think that'll be more of a discussion. I think it'll be worthwhile for us to just talk about how to have that discussion in a way that's helpful for you all, because some of it is, a lot of it is experience in what we've observed and sort of what we've done in terms of minimizing that gap between award to implementation. And we can speak to some of that. Some of that has changed because we've just put better systems in place. So I think it'll be helpful, and we'll check in with Tracy and D'Angelo just to figure out amongst the schedule when it'll be helpful to do that kind of deep dive with the full committee around community grants, because I suspect there's going to be deep interest. There's going to be significant interest not only amongst you all but also community members in seeing sort of what are we seeing overall.
Beautiful, Sam. Rand fees. Thank you, Meg.
Yeah, thanks for the update. And thanks for the questions from our committee members. I think it's really important that PCEF as a program, as a grant making body, be very clear and transparent. Who are the folks who are reading applications and making decisions on applications, or sort of making the recommendations, whether it goes through this committee or ultimately through council. I think it's just a very basic, practical approach to just grant making in general, whether it's, a foundation like Meyer Memorial Trust or Social Justice Fund, to sort of be clear about who reads those applications, how the scoring is done. I know some of that is included in the application, but I think more and more it becomes really important to be transparent how that's done, and then if it's an executive rule or via rule and statute, because looking in the statute, there's no clarity around who does or reads the applications or how they're selected. So I think it's just really important, as a good Bill of Rights for applicants. When they think about a program, I think integrity is the most important part. So knowing who reviews and scores applications, knowing what the scoring rubric of those applications ahead of time, that's important to keep things balanced and fair. And so those are just, I think, really key things to know. And that also helps folks who are applying to know who their audience are. It's very different when they think, oh, we're applying to a grant that's going to be reviewed by a volunteer committee versus, hey, we're applying for grants that is full of DCAs, or, hey, we're applying for grants or funds from folks selected by DCAs or your deputy city administrators. So that's kind of really, I think, just important to be clear. And then I think it's really important for Donnie as our deputy city administrator, as well as the other respective deputy city administrators, to be pretty clear and transparent about their selection process of how they select and review reviewers for this application process. So are these folks from the communities? Are these folks with expertise? Those are things, again, we as a committee are not part of that, but I think it's really important for us as a committee to make sure that kind of information is publicly posted on the PCEF website. To me, again, it's part of being fair, transparent to any applicant and any grantee as they're experiencing and going through this process, to be aware of that. And I think it's just, again, any grant writer would probably tell you, it's really important to know who their audience is when they're writing an application to a program like PCEF. So just want to note that. Second piece I want to note, and I'll try to be brief on this, on the on the ballot initiative. I know you can't speak too much on that, but a quarter of funds redirected out of the PCEF program in a period where I think we're expecting resource adequacy issues beginning in 2026, resource adequacy in electricity. We're going to see an increase of costs for ratepayers across the board throughout the city. We're going to experience an increased risk for blackouts and brownouts. Those are important funds that we're going to need within PCEF to ensure workers, community members, low-income ratepayers in general have a program like PCEF where we're deploying strategies like energy efficiency, battery storage, and energy generation projects within our city. So it'd be really important for the city and the PCEF program to be pretty clear what a 25% cut could look like in the program, knowing that we're already investing in city bureaus. So this isn't necessarily redirecting money from community grants, although it could be, but I think we're talking about redirecting city money with PCEF funding for police bureaus. So I really do have an expectation that city leadership, whether it's through Donnie as our DCA or the mayor's office, really be clear and transparent with the broader public in general, like what programs could be impacted with a 25% reduction within its current mission. So I just want to sort of note how important it is to educate the broader public about the impacts of such a measure.
Thank you so much, Ranfees. Anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Thank you, Sam, for those program updates. And thank you so much, committee, for those wonderful questions. James, I would love for you to take the annual CIP review updates and public comment.
All right, thank you, Dr. Moses. And so, yeah, this is pretty much the rest of the meeting is just going through at a very high level some of the feedback that we heard and the synthesis of the public comment that we received on the draft CIP amendment. So first, before I get into this, just huge thanks to Rachel for her work in tracking the comments as they were coming in, sorting them, characterizing them, and you all received a report yesterday that kind of brought together some of the high-level highlights as well as some direct quotes in the different program areas where the survey that we put out to the public kind of where things landed. So so huge thanks to Rachel, and there was a really pretty tight turnaround. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So again, just to kind of highlight where we are in the process and when the public comment was open from, it was open for a little over 2 weeks until last Wednesday, November 5th. And so there was definitely a quick turnaround to get that content synthesized and out to you yesterday, especially taking into account weekends and holidays. In terms of things that have happened since we last met as a full committee, we did have those 2 meetings and work sessions with City Council, including a shorter briefing for the Climate Resilience and Land Use Committee, and then a longer full 3-hour work session with all of City Council that happened on the 30th. And so now we're here just shortly after the public comment closed, and I'll provide a bit of an overview of both the process of the public comment and the results and what we heard back from the public. And so also huge thanks, to everybody who took the time to answer the survey or to mail in comments through our inbox as well. What's coming next is the subcommittee meeting of our awesome subcommittee who's been working on this draft recommendation and who will ultimately advance a recommendation to you all as a full committee. Meets next week on, I believe that's Thursday, the 20th. So huge thanks again to Robin, Faith, and D'Angelo for your work in that subcommittee. And then we anticipate that you all as a full committee will review that content and then be ready to take action on the December meeting. So that's where we are in the timeline. It's been quite a journey. So on to the next slide. So when the comment period opened, we pushed the survey out to our entire newsletter email list, which is over 3,000 people who've opted into that. And then we also pushed it out through different social media channels, and also to all of our grantees and partner organizations. And also thanks to many of you who also got the survey out there and the public comment period notification out there through your networks as well. And so, yeah, we did our best to, make sure that there was broad awareness of the fact that the public comment period was open. Also, it was open during the time that we went to council, and many people were tuned in to that virtually or otherwise watch it afterwards. And city councilors also who were in the Resilience and Land Use Committee also received information about that. In total, we received 58 survey responses to the online survey, and then 6 mailed or rather emailed responses that were more kind of in a written form. And actually, I believe we got one more today. I can't remember if that is already captured in that 64 number. It represented a broad range of organizations, public agencies, and a lot of just community members and individuals who took the time to fill out the survey. Of the comments that we received back, 20 were identified as from organizations, and those represented a broad range of housing and affordable housing organizations and developers, transit advocates and entities, energy efficiency organizations, and broader community advocates. And so, kind of a broad cross section of entities and people who are interested in what we're doing at PCEF. And go ahead and go to the next slide. So the first kind of set of questions was really, how clear was it between the red line document and the summary of proposed draft changes? How clear was it what the changes were? And there was kind of this ranking, and as you can see, the majority of respondents indicated that the proposed adjustments were either very clear or somewhat clear. We did receive, however, also some suggestions of ways to improve this process or make information more accessible in the future. And so those are, this being the first time we're doing an annual CIP update, I think we'll definitely have the opportunity to take these suggestions to heart and to look at things that were suggested, like making more plain language explanations of the proposed changes, using less jargon, doing some sort of community info session with more time in between in the public comment period, having more graphics and visuals to be able to explain some of the proposed draft changes, and then suggestions for more data or metrics about existing programs. And again, I want to say just kind of preemptively that we do anticipate the next CIP review process in 2026 having more of that information of the past program deployment, as this was just the first year of the full CIP. Go ahead and go next slide. So the next question in the survey was really, trying to gauge the public support or respondent support for the proposed shift that's in the draft proposal of moving funding from Strategic Program 13, the EV financing related program, to that Strategic Program 1 focused on affordable housing and energy efficiency improvements. And the vast majority of respondents, 71%, either strongly agreed or agreed with the proposed shift and the kind of rationale for that. However, in respondents' comments, also, as we heard from folks who testified or provided comment today, a strong support and acknowledgement that transportation decarbonization is an important part of both meeting our climate goals and also the community benefits that provides. And so you can see here kind of the sentiment as it breaks out into those different responses. Then going to the next slide, a little bit more detail on what we heard related to individual elements of those strategic programs. We heard from respondents broadly that they supported having more resources for affordable housing and that there was a urgent and current need for building more affordable housing, having that as energy efficient as possible, and that there's active projects kind of ready to take that, and that there is capacity. There were some respondents who were not in support or who had concerns, wanted to understand those trade-offs of what measures were being installed, or the amount per apartment dwelling that was being invested in, and then also some comments indicating that the program be expanded to focus on permanently affordable housing solutions or the non-regulated existing multifamily housing, and noting that we didn't go through the entire CIP and talk about the programs that we were launching, because there were some comments that referred to programs not by name, but program concepts that we are launching through other strategic programs that were not part of this draft CIP amendment. Then some comments related to the reduction of funding in the strategic program 13. Again, large support for the idea of vehicle electrification and recognition of the need to launch this program, even at the smaller amount. Also, we just noting that we had some direct feedback and a meeting with PBOT where they shared some suggestions for meeting the moment we're in now in terms of tax incentives going away for both vehicles and charging infrastructure, and the need for potentially greater flexibility in the way that incentives are delivered through the development of Strategic Program 13. Again, PBOT is the entity that regulates ride-hailing drivers, and so having their input was particularly helpful. Go to the next slide, and I'll get through maybe this slide, and then we'll take a short break because we're scheduled for a 7 o'clock break, and then we can come back. I'll finish things up, and then we can have some time for Q&A.
That sounds great.
And also, I'm gonna need some water in that break. So in the section of the draft CIP amendments that are focused on either goal or scope adjustments, there was a variety of comments. This was more of an open field to be able to provide feedback on those. And so in regard to Strategic Program 7, the Equitable Clean Transportation Access Program managed by PBOT, as we heard today as well, there was some concern about the removal of those emission reduction targets and mode shift goals. And I acknowledge that we probably could have explained some of the background and context related to that a little bit better in the documents. Also, some mixed comments, both in support of and then with concerns about the the potential investment in Biketown fleet assets, and both a recognition by some that Biketown is a form of active transportation that provides a much needed way to get around the city, and then other concerns about the idea of funding a private entity that provides a service. In the Strategic Program 14, access to fair and flexible capital, there was broad support among respondents for the allocation of $10 million to consumer energy efficiency and renewable energy financing tools. I think also in recognition of the moment we're in, where a lot of other incentive programs are going away at the federal level. And then there was some support, but also some concerns about the $35 million allocation for the financing programs managed by Prosper Portland, including the office to residential program, where there were concerns about the cost effectiveness of that approach to providing more housing in relation to other energy efficiency or housing production strategies. And some commenters noting a desire to focus on different elements, including preserving existing housing and alignment with serving historically underbanked communities. Then in strategic programs 21 and 22, these were ones where there was, kind of a rearrangement of goal but not really a change significantly in scope. There was generally understanding of an agreement with the proposed adjustments. However, on these two, which strategic program 21 is focused on the hydroelectric system relicensing and the federal energy regulatory process. And then strategic program 22 is focused on BES, Bureau of Environmental Services, and a whole suite of different programs that they're implementing with PCEF funds. There were concerns about the alignment of some of those elements, particularly around storm drain cleaning and that relicensing effort. So then going to strategic program 29, generally very broad support among respondents for better cleaned bike lanes, for having electrified equipment to provide that service, and to have kind of a higher level of expectation for bike lanes to be able to be clean and usable year round. And so, yeah, I'd say that one definitely had broad support across the board. All right, maybe I'll take a break 1 minute early and you can tell us how many minutes we get, Dr. Moses. Okay.
7:10. Let's go for 10-minute, 11-minute break. We'll come back at 7:10. Thank you, everyone. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Sam, is there anything you want to say before we jump into the second half here?
Nope.
Very good. Okay, James, take it away.
All right, I'll jump back in, and it's not quite the half because this is actually the last slide before some discussion. But wrapping up the rest of the topics that we asked questions of in the survey, there were, and maybe just also noting, you know, of the responses that we received, not everybody filled out every single part of the survey. So this kind of characterizes where we did hear feedback in these different areas. But there was a question, you know, a related kind of open comment field for the technical adjustments and city budget alignment adjustments that are proposed in the draft. And you know, this is an area where a lot of people didn't fill this out, but those that did express general support for the investments in existing housing and strategic program 25, in severe weather response, strategic program 5, and then tree care strategic program 34, and just express the need for those investments. Then, you know, there were some who had, it seems like, had either heard of, or this was maybe the first time hearing of the allocation that was made in the city budget process this year of moving funding from strategic program 34 and tree regulatory functions over to Portland Permitting and Development. And so some people just wanted to know more. Then there was kind of an open field or other thing, you know, opportunity for people to comment more broadly about things that were important to them, or I guess anything else that they would like you as a PCEF committee or staff to know as we proceed, as well as just some other themes that we pulled out that were in some other areas as well. And so some other topics or elements that came up was broadly, you know, concern about funding for city bureaus, trying to get a better understanding of the additionality that those funds provide versus continuation of existing funding or existing programs, and alignment of some of those programs with PCEF and in the program. As you know, I think we've heard as well today, a desire for more program data, metrics, and accountability in how we're presenting information and understanding what some of those changes might be. I'll also note, just, you know, out of full transparency, that there was a small amount of respondents, about 4, that just, you know, expressed what I would call as a deep skepticism about the need for any climate action whatsoever, and disagreement maybe with the premise of PCEF. Other priorities that were elevated throughout some of the comments included, you know, recognizing the need for public transit investments, and encouraging affordable housing development to happen around transit-oriented development patterns, and the need for transportation decarbonization in light of its large contribution to our overall regional greenhouse gas emissions. Support for an interest in further investments in green infrastructure, the linkage to climate adaptation resilience, and desire for us to kind of integrate between different funding areas in a greater way. And then support kind of ongoing for community grants and the work of nonprofit organizations, and support for kind of that initial vision of PCEF in the ballot. And then, yeah, quite a few comments noting just, you know, gratitude for the opportunity to provide the comment, and that it was generally seemed like a positive review process. So that is the summary of like hundreds of different individual fields and comments, and kind of a broad characterization. You all have some more detail in the document that you received yesterday, including kind of a representative sample of some themes and direct quotes. But here, I guess I'll pass it back to you all for questions or discussions about the public comment and what we heard. And I might tap in Rachel as well, if needed, to answer some details. So
That's
yeah,
great. Yeah, thank you so much. So I would love to hear from people who I haven't heard from yet. So, Anna, I'm going to tee you up if you don't mind, and you can pass and I will come back to you, but would love to hear your voice at this point.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Moses. Just a couple quick questions. Um, just want to put on record like appreciation for folks who took the time to fill out the survey. Lives are busy, and so that was some energy expensed. And I'm curious, like, what was it? Is there any form of like circle back with folks who filled out the survey of like, here's where you can find like, I know that maybe there's some, we want folks to be able to weigh in anonymously, but like, do we let them know, hey, you filled out the survey, here's where you can find the most recent CI, after it's updated and everybody's weighed in, is there a way for folks to see if their comments impacted the new CIB? And then also, when it comes to, and this might be a separate question more related to the earlier conversation, but is there any training for our internal administrators who are going through a selection process? And I'm particularly just curious, given my professional background of working with tribal governments and the Native community, there's a difference between Native-led organizations and tribal governments applying for funds. And I'm just curious, I think maybe this is something that can be more talked about offline, but tribal governments are sovereign nations and governments. Are they applying? Is there additional training when going through selection of understanding that kind of sovereign status versus like a Native-led NGO or CBO? So those are kind of my two things that came up for me throughout this process, but also just want to share appreciation for staff too, is community engagement is not easy, especially when it's a highly specialized topic where folks might not have a ton of background. So just also want to acknowledge all the work that goes into in a community engagement process.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe I'll have Sam answer the second question first about kind of what training is provided to reviewers in our grant process.
Yeah, well, maybe the approach I was gonna take, Anna, is maybe just today, and this may reflect just outreach work that we need to do, and I'd frankly be good to circle back with you and just have that conversation. Today, when we've gotten applications, we haven't received applications, to the best of my knowledge, and I generally been tracking that from tribal governments. It has been from nonprofits that do work with, that substantially do a lot of work with Indigenous and Native communities, but not from the former, not from tribal government. So that's an area though that, frankly, it's an area that it'd be worthwhile for us to kind of just check in and see if there's something else that you certainly think we should be doing. As you know, we've had a gap in that capacity at the city here for some time, in terms of that resource, having a tribal relations director.
Just acknowledging real quick a response to Sam. I appreciate that response and very much. I'm happy to, I'm involved in that process separately with the city as well, but also just have thoughts in the future of some intentional outreach or engagement that could happen, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And so just putting that on the table as a committee member.
Thank you so much.
And then, yeah, Anna, to respond to your first question about follow-up, that wasn't something we necessarily envisioned. The survey didn't give a place for contact information, but name and organization were optional fields for folks to fill out. I think, some people in organizations we do have connections with and know how to reach, and some we probably don't. So yeah, I think we can consider that, but it's not currently one of the like next steps that we have.
And I'm assuming sorry, Sam. I'm assuming it's going to go back out to that list, right, of 3,000 folks. And so anybody who had weighed in, I'm sure will view it. I was just curious of that kind of additional step, or maybe considerations in the future of, often folks are filling out surveys. I know I fill out surveys a lot. And when I do, I'm always curious if there's ever like, hey, you fill this out, here's the link to the thing. So just putting that for a future thing.
And if you don't mind me responding, I think that's exactly what I was going to say. Is it will go out, back out. Ultimately, the final product will go back out. Sometimes it may just be between when we're asking for these actions and ultimately when this lands, which I suspect will be in mid-January. There's going to be a bit of time, but I think by the nature of the types of comments you receive, you're hearing the nature of the amount of respondents. There's different products that we put out there that get different types of responses, and this is fairly technical, and I think that's what shows is you got to roll your sleeves up and get into this. And that's why when we get to the sort of the next climate investment plan, you'll get sort of a different array in which we try to touch base with folks, which some of our, where we try to engage them at a really high level, and some folks where we try to really pull them into the weeds with us. And so it'll certainly go back out to the listserv. That'll be the absolutely the place. And I suspect those that are commenting, given the nature and the interest you have to dive in like that, are gonna be keeping an eye out for that.
Beautiful. Thank you both. Tracy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Moses. And James, thank you so much for summarizing all the comments. They were really helpful for us to see those common themes that arose. And I'm really just pulling a thread that Anna mentioned about how will community have an opportunity to see how they, shaped, or if they do shape with their comments and feedback in the next version of it that will be posted in January. So is it that, once you make some reviews and it's the themes that you'll concentrate on, is it that you'll offer more clarifying language around it, or it could be that information is incorporated or no? I just would like to know that. And then secondly, I know that there were 4 respondents that provided feedback to the degree that they felt like no climate action was necessary. And I am curious, I haven't dug into the details that you sent. Did they offer something else that at least, showed that there's some merit to the great work that the mission of PCEF? I was wondering, did they point to anything else other than just, commenting that they didn't see that climate action was important?
Yeah, maybe to that second piece, I guess I'd have to go back, and I'm looking at a couple of these comments. Some are really around transportation issues and what might be perceived as a very pro automobile, not fans of active transportation and biking. And so I would say largely no, there wasn't, from those commenters, there wasn't a lot of solutions proposed broadly. I guess I'm trying to give as objective an assessment as possible here, but
appreciate it. Thank you so much, James.
And then to your first comment, I do think that this feedback that we received, we'll also be having a deeper discussion with the subcommittee. But in addition to any changes that might be recommended, I think it also does help us as staff understand where we need to explain things a little bit more as we go to the full city council and create that, content that is going on to the public as city council is deliberating. And so I think that it is very helpful, definitely in that regard, to clarify places where we can add more context or information in this next round.
Thank you so much.
Sam?
I want to see if there's any comments. I want to circle back to a comment Tracy made, but I want to make sure I'm watching time, and I want to make sure committee members have a moment to speak before I chime in. So,
Andre, okay. Andre, do you have anything you want to bring forward?
I do not.
Okay, Meg, then, yes, please.
Yeah, I just want to observe that some of the survey responses, track some of the discussion points we've raised about this. Like there were some questioning the office to housing conversion focus of some of the changes, which is a topic we've discussed as a committee. And I think I'll be curious what the subcommittee comes back to on that. So just kind of observing that some of those comments. And another one that you mentioned, there were a lot of write-in comments about wanting to see the data of PCEF, and that prompted me to go check out our dashboard. It doesn't look particularly updated or evolved since we last saw it a long time ago. And so I'm just curious for an update on that. Like, will it be get richer and full. We've been hearing so much about PCEF programs, but the dashboard doesn't appear particularly updated or robust or dynamic. And I don't know, maybe I'm mischaracterizing that, but I would just love to hear an update.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And you are correct in the sense that the dashboard still reflects community grants pretty much exclusively, plus Schooling Portland. It does not yet capture the broad array of strategic programs because that's a much bigger lift and it's in the works. Sam, I don't know if you want to talk more about yeah.
I will, because I think this is an area where actually it would be really helpful to engage a subcommittee of committee members. We're going through a full, I mean, we have the benefit of having more staff now. And so we're going through a full, essentially a full inventory and review of all the data that we collect. Now, surprise, it's that we focused on collecting a tremendous amount of data. The challenge that we've had as we've gone through and tried to validate that data is the quality of the data. And so we're going through a lot of discussions now. And I suspect it'll take the better part of this next year where we start to talk about how we simplify the data that we collect so we have better data that can roll up in more accurate ways so it dovetails with, yes, we're bringing on strategic programs and figuring out how to tell that data. But I also want to just acknowledge, I think we're very much in that what our first generation of information that we pulled together and have been collecting over the past several cycles, we have a lot of rich data. What we don't have is data that rolls up as neatly, as smoothly, and it's really limited our ability to tell a broader story because there's significant in our desire to capture every data point that we can capture. There's some significant data integrity concerns in terms of our ability to roll up, not integrity, but our ability to roll that up. So we're going through that sort of evaluation and inventory and auditing of all our data right now and starting to reframe for our version 2.0. What is that going to look like? And I can say it's going to need to be a conversation with the committee because we're going to need to make some pretty significant decisions in terms of deciding to not capture some data so that we can capture better data. And that's the conversation we're starting just now internally. When I say just now, internally, we've begun that conversation. But I want to tee you up, Megan, because you've been pretty closely involved in that. I know Ramfis, you were involved in that. I know Faith and Robin, you all have been involved in that, but it's been something that we've had to reckon with pretty clearly. And so while the dashboard certainly is focused on community grants, as we're moving to bring on new programs, we've had to have some pretty hard conversations around what's really important to collect because the systems we put up in earnest to move to quickly get projects going really make it challenging to roll it up in a way that can tell an actual story to the public at large. So we're telling the stories. We still have data. It's not to say we don't have all that information, but what I want to say is what we have is a lot of data, a lot of information, and it's actually it's been really challenging to figure out how do we coalesce that into something that tells the bigger picture.
Yeah, just to quickly respond, I'd be happy to be in a subcommittee. I think it's just super important. We're hearing it from the community. We're going to hear it from electeds that make decisions. We're going to hear it from the campaign that's raising signatures right now. Like, what's the impact of PCEF? So I think it's probably one of our most important priorities is to get that story out there bigger and better. So yeah,
we have countless stories, Megan. We have millions of
Asking
stories. We
about
have
it.
hundreds of stories. I think it's being able to tell a handful of really clear, compelling cases.
Thank you so much. Robin, I'd love to give you an opportunity if you want to chime in this evening.
Nothing really in particular. I appreciate the information feedback. I'm going to be doing a deeper dive with the subcommittee, so I think my more detailed questions will be kind of covered at that point.
Fantastic. Thank you. Ramfis.
Yeah, I was kind of curious if we'll be able to get to see the comments. I appreciate the synthesis of all the comments. Would be good to see if it'd be possible for community members to have access to be able to review all the raw comments. And then I guess kind of similar on this question, like, are there voices we didn't hear from? Like, did we hear from? Are there like a particular type of group that we just for whatever reason just didn't hear from, like renter groups, labor, you know, conservation groups. Like, I just kind of curious, like if there's any particular group we didn't hear from.
Yeah, thanks, Renfis. And I would say, you know, broadly, there's a lot of groups we didn't hear from or that we don't know if we heard from, because only 20 respondents indicated that they were part of an organization or responding on behalf of an organization. So yeah, I'd say there's a lot of folks and segments of our community that we did not hear from.
Thank you.
I don't know if that helps though.
Yeah, it helps. I think maybe it just goes back to like maybe a point I heard earlier from Ann and other committee members, just sort of asking about our engagement. You know, it seems like a big decision anytime we make a CIP or make an amendment to a CIP. Feels like the first time around we had a robust process. This is a pretty quick process with short timelines and turnaround. So it's always good to know who are the voices that we're hearing from, who are the voices we're not hearing from. You know, inputs are only so good. You know, it's good to know the inputs that we're missing when we're making really important key decisions.
Thank you so much. All right. Any other questions for James and Sam? Sam, do you want to take us out of this meeting this evening?
No, big kudos to the team. I had the fortune of being in Brazil last week for the C40 conference. So just big kudos to Rachel, James, and the rest of the team that pulled this forward and wrap this up and get this in this tight time frame. So I think mainly for you all, I mean, you all know this is something we're going to continue to revisit in terms of this process. This is something that we're doing here this year, and this is something we need to build in a way that's replicable, that we can do in a way that we figure out. So I think keep taking those notes around what we can do better next time, acknowledging we're going to always be fitting it. Ultimately, it should never be something that takes the better part of the year, since that's what the next CIP will be. So it's really finding that, striking that balance point of what an annual update can reasonably be. And so really appreciate the feedback. I think we'll have our next conversations with the subcommittee, and then we'll come back to this group as a whole in December and look to make that recommendation. So just thank you all, and please ping us, ping your co-chairs or others if you've got any thoughts. Really appreciate y'all.
Thank you, everyone. Our meeting's adjourned at 7:32 this evening. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
The meeting
Thank
we need
you,
slides.
everyone. Bye.
Your trip.